Welcome to another in our series of podcast episodes. My name is Jaydev Chiba, and today I have with me in the studio Grant Phillips. Grant is the CEO of E4. Welcome, Grant. Good to have you in the studio today.
Jaydev, thanks very much for having me.
Awesome. Grant, before we get into the detail of our topic today, which is really about the E4 vision, maybe you want to chat a little bit about what does E4 do, and you know, you've recently had an acquisition by Infinite Partners of E4. So let's talk a little bit about what that means for your company.
Certainly. So Jaydev, E4 was founded over 20 years ago now. And originally, the premise behind the opportunity was to effectively create a switch to link, at that stage, the lenders, by and large being the banks, with conveyancers and attorneys in the home buying process. Obviously, the business has evolved materially over the last 20 years, and we've layered in a myriad of different value-add solutions and products on top of that fundamental switch. Whereas now, you know, when we talk about E4, we kind of define it in three distinct areas. So we have that traditional, what we refer to as proptech, where we effectively provide a digital ecosystem for the home buying process, particularly on the fulfillment side, where all stakeholders in the home buying process, the lender, the conveyancer, the rates councils, the deeds office, and ultimately the home buyer, effectively are able to communicate in a digital way through our platform to facilitate the home buying transaction. We also have South Africa's largest search and data aggregation platform in our Searchworks business based down in Cape Town. And a lot of that data underpins a lot of the insight that we create in that home buying ecosystem as well. So it's very synergistic. And quite recently, we've launched an international business, which we'll get onto in a little bit more detail later, where we've identified an opportunity in the UK where we've partnered with the second biggest lender in the UK to build out a very similar digital ecosystem, albeit with a rather niche entry point into the market, the strategy being very much one of land and expand, but are creating an industry-wide platform in the UK to provide digital enablement for the home buying process as well.
For now, you've been operating in South Africa predominantly.
Absolutely. So we do have operations in Mauritius and Namibia as well, but by and large, our P&L is a ZAR-based P&L.
Just going back to the acquisition by Infinite Partners, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So around 2 years ago, kind of at the early stage of the pandemic, there was a massive amount of focus and interest on proptech globally and proptech enterprises, and you know, particularly in the US and the European markets. Obviously, as a proptech business and at the forefront of digital enablement in the property sector in South Africa, there was a lot of interest in our enterprise, and our previous shareholders and the board decided to go to market. There was a lot of interest in the asset. Obviously, it ticks a number of boxes from financial investors' perspective. You know, it's a high growth business, high margin, and highly cash convertive. And we went through quite a protracted process. Obviously, the pandemic didn't help. It's never easy doing transactions, and when you've got these kind of global issues at play. So it took us close on 18 months to finalize the transaction. As I say, we had a number of interested parties, and you know, through Infinite Partners, I think we found a cap table that was very much aligned to the strategy and the vision of the organization. They were very supportive of the leadership team. So we're very excited around what it means. You know, we've had some really promising engagements with the Infinite team, as well as 27/4 who've come in behind Infinite Partners as part of the transaction. So yeah, we're very excited. You know, they're very engaged, you know, very supportive of our strategy, very supportive of our global expansion plans. So really excited around what the next few years means for us.
So if you had to articulate the vision for the future, what would that vision be?
So, you know, I think, you know, whilst we are the dominant player in the South African proptech ecosystem, we do still see a number of areas of organic growth in the South African market in our core business. We've recently onboarded FNB as a client. It's kind of been the last of the blue chip enterprises that we've partnered with now. So, a really interesting roadmap ahead for us with FNB. We continue to partner and evolve with the likes of Standard Bank and ABSA, who've been anchor tenants of ours for over 15 years. When we think about the future, when we think about where we're going, obviously South Africa will still play a very, very key part, and we've got a very interesting growth story and narrative around that. We've also launched some early stage businesses in the digital onboarding space, which for us is strategically important in that the digital onboarding service bus that we've created is industry agnostic, and we're starting to see some data points and some relevance outside of our traditional playground being the property space. And then also obviously the international play. It is relatively early stage. We're looking to go into pilot in the back end of this year. But if we take a kind of 3 to 5 year lens, obviously the art of the possible in a hard currency market that does around 9 times more volume than the South African market is really, really interesting and really, really exciting for us. So yeah, we're in a great place. We spent the last 2.5 years kind of putting ourselves in a great position to take advantage when the markets turn. So we're really excited around what the Infinite partnership looks like for us and what it means to enable the growth going forward.
So, I mean, if I could summarize, it's largely about diversifying around your core business and then looking at the expansion beyond the shores of South Africa. Yeah,
absolutely. I think when you look at the macroeconomic situation, not only in South Africa but globally at the moment, it is depressed. And I think when you look at our core business, we do feel the brunt of some of these macro headwinds. And strategically, as a leadership team, we've been very proactive in terms of looking at differentiating and diversifying our revenue mix in the business. So it's been very intentional, very disciplined, and we'll continue to execute on that. Obviously, our core business being in the proptech space will continue to evolve and continue to grow as the market does. But yes, it's something we've been very focused on in terms of creating diversified opportunities and looking at natural adjacencies and complementary industries to take some of the organizational capabilities and repurpose those in adjacent industries.
Okay. E4 has shown strong growth trajectory under your leadership. So what are the factors that you believe contributed to that, and how do you believe you can sustain that going into the future?
Yeah, look, I think as an organization, one of the things we pride ourselves in is positioning ourselves as strategic partners. We are not vendors to our clients. We've got massive longevity in our relationships. We are very embedded and integrated in our client environments. And quite often we are seen as part of their core banking systems. But that really is on the back of leveraging these relationships and ultimately through creating value for our client base. So, that has allowed us to execute on this blueprint with our clients where we are able to layer in additional solutions and create value adds in areas of friction using digital enablement for our customer base. So, yes, it's been very successful for us over the last kind of 4 to 5 years. And as you say, the business has shown some really impressive growth. But that being said, this is the start. We've got some really interesting early stage initiatives that once again will continue to add incremental value. And that's outside of traditional industries and outside of traditional verticals that we've historically played in. So we're really excited around what that means. And the execution plan against our strategy is very compelling and obviously is a key part of what Infinite Partners saw in the business. So we're really looking forward to what the partnership means in terms of unlocking our ability to execute against that strategy and that vision.
That's great to hear. So you're a leader in the technology and financial services, property services market. And what are some of the industry trends that you are observing in that property acquisition space? And how are you positioning yourself to capitalize it? I think you spoke a little bit about looking at where there's friction and helping it lubricate that friction, if I could call it that.
Yeah. So, look, I think everybody is aware of some of the macro headwinds that are kind of kicking around in the market at the moment. And as I say, this is not unique to South Africa. It is a global phenomenon. We're seeing interest rates at levels we haven't seen since 2007. And that obviously is creating a huge amount of pressure in the market from a credit perspective. Obviously, affordability is a challenge. There are concerns from the lender's perspective around non-performing loans. So we are starting to see some depression in terms of activity in the home buying space. But that being said, this is not our first rodeo. We've been around for 20 years and, we definitely view these macro headwinds as cyclical. And history has proven that to be so. So, as an organization, I think we focus very much on the controllables. There's certain aspects that happen to you, and there's very little we as an organization can do to, increase the number of home buying transactions in the market. So we focus at times like these on controllables, looking at unlocking additional value for our clients in depressed markets where we are seeing a contraction in the number of home buying transactions. And we really see this kind of contraction or this kind of rebasing post-pandemic to be around probably for another 12, potentially another 18 months. Okay. I know there is talk of one more rate increase. And ultimately, the consumer, the man on the street, is struggling. The cost of living is increasing, the cost of credit is increasing, and that's absolutely having an impact in terms of home buying as well as kind of all asset-backed finance. The vehicle and asset finance space is also being impacted. So, we're not tone deaf to it. The market's not tone deaf to it, and our shareholders are not tone deaf to it. But I think also is we take this time to kind of rebuild and look at creating internal efficiencies and optimization, looking at refactoring of our code and kind of driving our cloud readiness program within the organization. So it's not quiet. There's a lot going on, albeit in a largely depressed home buying space.
But you clearly will be ready when the market does turn.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really, as a business, what we're focusing on and what we're pushing in the organization is to say, it is cyclical. We've seen this before. And really my job is to ensure that the organization is best positioned, that when the market does turn, and it will, that we're ready to take advantage of those tailwinds.
We were talking about clients a moment ago. What are some of the trends you're seeing on the client side, and how are they leveraging your solutions to add value to their business?
So, I think particularly on the lenders side, that they're starting to feel the pressure. As I mentioned earlier, non-performing loans are starting to become a concern. There was a huge amount of credit written during the pandemic. Interest rates were at an all-time low. Credit was really affordable, and the South African economy and the South African consumers in particular are credit hungry. They always have been. The level of indebtedness has increased substantially over the last 3 years. So, I think for us as an organization, we are cognizant of that. And, our strategic partners, being the banks by and large, are absolutely feeling this as well. I think there's an element of nervousness to a certain extent around the impact of affordability and what that could mean for non-performing loans, which means extension of new credit is relatively conservative. Particularly when you view it in context of what we've seen over the last 36 months. So, for us, really our role at the moment in terms of where we're adding value for our clients is to look at areas of friction, as I mentioned earlier, looking at optimizing their existing processes, looking at where there are kind of bottlenecks in their ecosystems. Because ultimately our role as digital enablers in the home buying ecosystem is to reduce the period of time from when a consumer identifies the property that they want to acquire to them getting the keys to the property. Ultimately, that is our role, is to try and decrease the amount of time for a home buyer to move into what is the biggest purchase that they would probably make in their lives.
So, you've spoken about kind of the general trends you're seeing in the industry. We're talking about some of the trends with the clients as well, and how is your company evolving to meet those needs? And, have you got new initiatives, new developments? You spoke a little bit about it at the beginning.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, as a tech business, we're never sitting still. It's an ever evolving world. I think for us is, we've been in the property space now for 20 years, and we're very fluent in terms of what the industry challenges are. We understand where we add value. And I think for us, a key focus for us at the moment is looking at the capabilities that we've developed within the organization and looking at how we repurpose and repackage those. So a lot of the products and the capabilities and the solutions that we've created can provide a huge amount of value in adjacent industries. So things like vehicle and asset finance, things like insurance and medical industry as well. So we're looking to unlock opportunities there. As I say, and we're very disciplined around how we expand. We do a lot of our research beforehand, and as I say, as a discipline within the organization, we build what we sell. We are not in the movie of building the next shiny thing. We proactively go out and engage with target segments. We understand industry challenges. We articulate the value proposition. So ultimately, as we have a warm partner who's ultimately looking to work with us to remove friction in their ecosystem. So that, when we look over the next 3 to 5 years, that's going to be a key focus of the business. Is looking at some of the initiatives and some of the value creation that we've been very successful with in the property space, to looking to implement those into some of the natural adjacencies, particularly in the retail banking space as well.
Yeah, you've spoken about the kind of benefits that customers do get, but just share a little bit about, are they saving money? Are they saving time? What's the benefit to the end client? What's the benefit to your clients?
Yeah. So, look, it is multifaceted. As I've just mentioned, a key part of our role is to shorten the lead times of conversion from asset identification to asset ownership. So, that has a benefit for all stakeholders in the ecosystem. So from a lender's perspective, obviously the quicker that bond is registered at the deeds office, the quicker they're able to deploy the cash, and ultimately they get into a revenue generating cycle. For the consumer, ultimately is, they want to shorten the amount of time from identifying the asset purchase to actually moving in and having that asset, under their control. So for us really is our value creation is multifaceted. So we look at removing areas of friction that are kind of barriers in terms of that lead time. We look at optimization and automation, so using digital technologies to automate what historically would have been very manual or people-driven exercises. Examples being document checking. For those of us that have been fortunate enough to purchase property, historically it's been a very paper-intensive kind of process. You've got to submit 3 months of bank statements, and there's all sorts of documentation that you submit. And historically, the banks would have teams of people, often close to 100 individuals, that their sole job was to check documentation. And quite often it is just verifying against additional documents that consumers have submitted. Yeah. So, one of our more recent initiatives, we've effectively leverage robotics to take that human element out, where there is consistent document creation and generation, which we facilitate for the banks. So where we have the single source of truth, the obvious next step and the next iteration was to remove the risk of kind of human oversight and human error by using robotics to check that data and effectively verify and validate that the information that's been provided is correct, which in turn obviously shortens lead times, turnaround times, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, we touch a myriad of different parts in that home buying ecosystem, and ultimately each of our touch points are there to remove friction.
You clearly have become a digital enablement partner for a lot of your clients.
Yeah.
How are you assisting them in their own digital journey?
That's been a very interesting one for us. Obviously our digital kind of focus and, this digital transformation was a drop word for us before it was a drop word. And, kind of we were doing it without it necessarily being labeled, 10 or 15 years ago. But, with and a great example for us and a great win for us, I think is, and where we've been able to really show our digital power and the digital toolkits that we as an organization have been able to create. So with the advent of the papaya legislation,
Yes.
Obviously with us being a very data-intensive business, it was a very large, broad task for us, and we had to upscale and upskill very quickly within the organization. But on the back of that, and the successes that we had in terms of our own internal papaya project, we in turn actually delivered papaya projects for blue chip organizations out in the market outside of our traditional wheelhouse. One of the biggest FMCG organizations, we ran their papaya compliance project for them. So, we've given ourselves permission to be many things to many people, leveraging some of the capabilities that we've built within the organization over the last 20 years.
Yeah. In a lot of these organizations that are your clients, have you become almost a part of their internal
Absolutely.
processes and internal teams?
Absolutely, Jaydev. So, as I mentioned earlier, is we pride ourselves in being viewed as strategic partners. And really we develop and we partner with most of our clients on a number of different fronts. As I say, we have this discipline of building what we sell, and in order to do that is you've got to have a very clear understanding around what your client's business challenges are. So we spend a lot of time in our client's domain understanding some of the frustrations and challenges they have, both within our existing playground, but also within adjacent playgrounds. And I mentioned things like asset finance.
Yeah.
So a number of core banking projects, project rewrites, looking at where the banks in particular are looking to refresh or reinvigorate some of their core internal functionality and capabilities. We really are seen as strategic partners, and we definitely assist our banking clients in a lot of their core internal projects as well. It's not only them consuming capabilities and solutions from E4. It's also looking at some of the E4 IP and knowledge base that we've built up over the last 20 years and leveraging that within the bank's environment to allow them to expedite project delivery, allow them to create efficiencies, and ultimately, looking to E4 as thought leaders around things like architecture and infrastructure as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a really neat way where you're very good in a particular area, but you can see very close in adjacent areas that could use your expertise and almost naturally move into those areas.
Absolutely. We've been so instrumental in building out some of the core plumbing in the retail banks in South Africa over the last 20 years, that we really do have intricate knowledge around how a myriad of the bank's core platforms work. So, we really are seen as thought leaders and business partners for the banks, and they do lean on us quite substantially to assist them to ensure that they minimize the school fees that they pay on a number of their internal projects as well.
And I think it adds a lot of value to them as well. It's a quicker way of solving their problems than going to find somebody completely new that may be experts in a particular area but don't understand the full value chain of the business.
Absolutely. And ultimately, banks are financial services experts. They're not necessarily technology experts, although many of them would beg to differ with me. But I think what we have seen over particularly the last 5 to 7 years, is a broader understanding and appreciation that partnering with industry experts in certain areas of digital transformation absolutely delivers faster and better results for the organization and the enterprise in total. So, we've been very fortunate that our partners, do look to us to assist them in a lot of their core initiatives. And we've got some really great white papers on the back of that as well. So, yeah, we're very proud of what the team have done.
Yeah, you've clearly built a fantastic legacy over the last 20 years. So going forward, and I think you've articulated a number of approaches and strategies, spoken about the plans going forward. Anything over and above that in terms of how do you keep yourself the leader over the next 5 to 10 years?
Look, that's the crystal ball question, isn't it? I think for us as an organization, I think what we've realized is that we're operating in a very agile, very nimble environment. Technology is accelerating and the nature of technology advances is faster now than it's ever been. So, it's for us as, we get asked this question quite often. And I think for us is a key part of how we remain relevant is maintaining the strategic partner label and narrative.
Okay.
I think for us is understanding where our clients are going, where they want to get to and how they want to get there is critical for us. Coming back to this point of building what we sell is, we work with our clients to understand the challenges that are coming their way and the headwinds that are coming their way. We obviously continue through our R&D function to look at next generation technologies, to look at opportunities that are coming down the pipeline, new ways of doing things, artificial intelligence and what that means for the industry at large, blockchain and smart contracting, what that means for the industry at large. These are all initiatives and technology themes that we as an organization are staying very, very close to. We obviously look to embed them in our core service offerings, as and when they fit. But I think for us is when we look to the next 3 to 5 years, obviously the international expansion is a very interesting one for us and a really exciting opportunity for us. It's also allowed us to look at rebuilding some of our core functionality and core capabilities. So, this is not the E4 business lifting and shifting our core technologies. We're actually taking the opportunity to build fit-for-purpose solutions for the international markets, which we're building out of our Mauritian entity, as well as on the ground in the UK. So we're really excited around effectively what a version 2.0 looks like. We want to build one and use many. So we have aspirations of becoming kind of multi-geography. So we have identified opportunities in other European and other international markets as well. But, as I say, we're very disciplined around how we want to grow. So we want to prove our relevance and earn our stripes in the UK market. As I say, we're looking to launch at the back end of this year to go into full production in the early part of next year and really excited around what those proof points mean for us and both in terms of our existing enterprise, but also in terms of a broader international strategy.
Yeah, I was going to talk about the expansion, but you've touched on it already. I think that's great. Any final or closing comments you'd like to share before we end today?
No, Jaydev, I think for us is it's the last 12 to 18 months have been very tough. I think for the industry as a whole, it's been very, very tough. We're not unique in this, whether that be geographically or from an industry perspective. But we continue to fight the good fight. As an organization, we're in a great place. We've got a great set of shareholders sitting alongside us who are very, very supportive of our strategy. And as an organization, we continue to be very disciplined around how we execute and how we continue to add value for our clients. And really, really looking forward to hopefully a shift from the headwind to the tailwind. But rest assured, E4 as an organization will be very well positioned when that market does turn. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think just last word from me. I think you're very well positioned. You've done all the right things, it seems, to enable yourself for a further growth trajectory. So wish you all the best and thank you very much.
Jaydev, thanks very much. I really appreciate it.